Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I worked retail for about 8 years. This story from my time at a medium-sized retailer still makes me shake my head. I was the assistant manager there, handling everything from inventory to customer complaints. The store sold everything you could imagine: candy, garden tools, home goods, seasonal decorations. You name it, we probably had it somewhere in those cramped aisles. The thing about retail is that you learn to roll with the punches. Customers can be difficult, shipments arrive late, and upper management always seems to have ideas that sound great on paper but fall apart in reality. I'd been with this company for 3 years when this whole mess started, working my way up from a part-time stockroom position. I liked the job well enough. The pay wasn't amazing, but my direct manager was reasonable, and I'd gotten good at handling the day-to-day chaos. Our store had this event section right at the front entrance. It was impossible to miss. Customers had to walk right past it to get into the store. We'd rotate the merchandise every few weeks depending on what was coming up. Valentine's Day meant chocolates and cards. Easter brought fake grass and plastic eggs. Halloween was always our biggest event section, with costumes and decorations taking up half the front of the store. The system usually worked pretty smoothly. Corporate would send us an email about what the next event would be, then the stock would arrive about a week before we needed to set it up. My team and I would spend a few days clearing out the old stuff and arranging the new merchandise. Sometimes items would be missing from the shipment. That's just how retail works. When that happened, we'd grab similar items from other parts of the store to fill the gaps. A missing type of chocolate. We'd grab some from the candy aisle. No garden decorations for spring? We'd pull some from the garden center. It kept the section looking full and gave customers options. This had been our routine for years without any problems. Then early April rolled around, and everything changed with one email. I was in the back office doing paperwork when my computer chimed with a new message from corporate. The subject line read, "Event Section Protocol Update." I figured it was just another minor policy change. Those happened all the time. The email was short and to the point. Do not replace missing event lines with any other lines. I read it twice, then called over my supervisor, who was working on scheduling. I asked him to look at the email because I thought I was missing something. He came over, and I explained that corporate was telling us not to fill missing event lines with other products, which didn't make sense since we always did that. My supervisor read it over my shoulder and frowned. He agreed it was weird and suggested I should email them back for clarification. So I did. I sent a polite email explaining that we regularly had missing items in event deliveries and asking for clarification. Did they want us to spread out the existing items to fill empty spaces, leave gaps? What exactly were they looking for? The response came back the next day. Just leave the space for any missing lines empty. It will look like they have sold out. I stared at the screen for a full minute. In all my years in retail, I'd never heard such a backwards idea. Empty shelves don't look like sold-out success stories. They look like poor planning and management. But corporate had spoken, so I forwarded the email to my team and told them about the new rule. My co-worker, who handled most of the event setups, just laughed when I explained the new policy. She said they wanted us to leave empty spaces and called it the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. She pointed out that customers were going to think we didn't know what we were doing. I agreed it was ridiculous, but told her it was what corporate wanted. I said we should just follow the rules and see what happened. For the next few events, we got lucky. Most of our shipments arrived complete, so the new rule didn't really affect us. Sure, we had a few empty spots here and there, but nothing too obvious. I started to think maybe corporate knew something I didn't. Then Mother's Day season arrived, and everything went sideways. Our delivery truck showed up on the usual day, and I went out to help unload like always. We had pallets of regular merchandise, soap, snacks, cleaning supplies, the usual stuff. But while we worked through everything, I realized something was wrong. I asked the delivery driver where the Mother's Day items were. He told me that what we'd unloaded was everything he had for us. and suggested maybe they were coming on the next truck. I checked and double checked the delivery manifest. Not a single Mother's Day item was listed. No flowers, no cards, no gift sets, no decorations, nothing. I immediately sent an email to corporate explaining the situation. The response came back quickly. They will come on your next delivery. Do not fill empty space. So we cleared out the Easter merchandise and left the entire event section empty. It looked terrible. Customers kept asking what was happening with the front display. When people asked if we were closing down, I had to explain that we were just waiting for our next shipment to arrive. They would look around at the empty space and comment on how empty everything looked. And I could only tell them that our new merchandise should be there soon. But it wasn't. The next delivery came and went with no Mother's Day items. I sent another email to corporate, more urgent this time. We were now just 2 weeks away from Mother's Day with a completely empty event section. This time I got no response at all. I tried calling the corporate office but kept getting transferred around until I eventually gave up. My supervisor suggested we just fill the space with something, but I reminded him about the explicit instructions we'd received. My supervisor said the whole situation was insane and that we were going to lose so much money. I agreed it was crazy but told him corporate had been very clear about what they wanted. Customer complaints started pouring in. People couldn't understand why a retail store would have a huge empty section right at the entrance during one of the biggest gift-giving holidays of the year. Angry customers would ask what kind of store doesn't have anything for Mother's Day and call the situation ridiculous. I had to keep apologizing for the inconvenience and telling people we were expecting new merchandise very soon, but I knew we weren't. Mother's Day was now just days away, and our event section remained completely bare. It was embarrassing and frustrating, but corporate had been crystal clear about their expectations. The day after Mother's Day, I was dreading the weekly conference call with all the regional store managers and upper management. These calls usually covered sales numbers, upcoming promotions, and any issues that needed addressing. I knew our numbers were going to be terrible. The call started normally with the usual pleasantries. Then the regional manager jumped into the sales reports. He mentioned that most stores did well with Mother's Day, but said he was seeing some concerning figures. He called out our store specifically, saying our event sales were completely zero, and asked me to explain what happened. I took a deep breath and unmuted my line. I told him we never received any Mother's Day merchandise and that I had sent multiple emails about it. The regional manager sounded confused and said he didn't understand what I meant because every store got their Mother's Day shipment. He asked why we didn't fill the space with other items since that was standard procedure. This was the moment I've been waiting for. I explained that we had received specific instructions in April not to replace missing event lines with other products. I told him the email said to leave empty spaces so they would look like sold-out items and offered to forward that email if he wanted to see it. The silence that followed was absolutely beautiful. I could practically hear the panic in the background, while people started shuffling through their emails and whispering to each other. Another store manager spoke up and said they had gotten that email too. They said they thought it was weird, but they'd been following it. A different manager agreed and said they'd had empty spots for weeks because of that policy. The regional manager's voice got very quiet when he said he would look into the situation and get back to everyone. The call ended abruptly. After that, within an hour, every store in the region received a new email with the subject line Event Section Protocol Clarification. The message was short. Please use your best judgment when filling missing lines for events. No apology. No acknowledgement of the confusion they'd caused. No explanation for why they'd implemented such a backwards policy in the first place. Just a quiet reversal that tried to make it seem like we'd all misunderstood something obvious. My supervisor and I had a good laugh about it later. He said he couldn't believe they tried to act like it was our fault. I told him watching that silence on the conference call was perfect because you could tell they knew they'd messed up big time. We went back to our old system of filling empty spaces with appropriate merchandise from other parts of the store. Our event sections looked full and professional again. Customer complaints disappeared, and our sales numbers bounced back to normal. I never got a direct apology from anyone in corporate, but I did notice that their future policy emails were much more detailed and clear about expectations. Apparently, having an entire region of stores with empty shelves was enough to teach them that maybe they should think through their brilliant ideas a little more carefully. I've been living in the same house for 20 years now, and for most of that time, I've had to deal with the worst neighbor imaginable. My husband and I bought our first home in what seemed like a quiet, friendly neighborhood. We were excited to put down roots and become part of a community. Little did we know that the guy living right next door would make our lives miserable for the next 2 decades. The trouble started almost immediately after we moved in. I came home from work one day to find an extension cord sneaking across my yard, plugged directly into one of my exterior outlets. The cord led straight to my neighbor's house. This guy was literally stealing my electricity. I unplugged the cord and walked over to confront him. When I asked him why his extension cord was plugged into my outlet, he acted like it was no big deal. He said he just needed a little extra power for his workshop and told me not to be so uptight about it when I explained that he was stealing my electricity without permission. I was furious but tried to stay calm. I told him never to do it again and went back inside. But I wasn't going to let this slide. I have a friend who's an electrician, so I called him up and explained the situation. My friend came over the next day and we hatched a plan. He rewired that exterior outlet to 220 volts instead of the standard 110. I never heard any explosions or saw any smoke, but I really hoped my neighbor had been using my stolen electricity to power something expensive. Whatever happened, he never plugged another extension cord into my outlets again. But that was just the beginning. Over the years, my neighbor developed a habit of having strange house guests who would stay for days or even months at a time. I suspect he was luring them over with promises of free lodging and maybe drugs or alcohol. These people would constantly wander over to our house, knocking on our door at all hours and asking if they could use our Wi-Fi. Every time one of these guests would show up asking for our Wi-Fi password, claiming they just needed to check email real quick, I would tell them our internet was for our household only. They would keep pushing, saying they wouldn't use much data and begging for just a few minutes of access. My husband would back me up and tell them we already said no and to leave our property. This happened so often that we finally got fed up and decided to mess with them. My husband, who works in IT, set up a fake open Wi-Fi network that looked like free internet. But when someone tried to connect, they would get redirected to a page that only played that old music video, Never Gonna Give You Up on repeat. Basically, anyone trying to steal our Wi-Fi got rickrolled. We even got a framed photo of the singer and rigged it with LED lights behind the eyes. Whenever someone tried to access our fake network, the eyes would light up so we'd know they were getting pranked. The rickroll network worked perfectly. The weird house guests stopped coming over asking for internet access. The neighbor also had a habit of cutting through our backyard like it was his personal shortcut. One afternoon, my husband and I were doing yard work when his dog came charging into our yard and attacked my husband. The dog bit him on the leg and wouldn't let go until I grabbed a rake and scared it off. I immediately called animal control and filed a report. The officer who came out was not happy about the situation. He told us this was a serious bite and that our neighbor needed to contain his animal properly. I explained that the dog ran loose all the time and that this was bound to happen eventually. The neighbor was forced to fence in his backyard, but he did such a terrible job that his dog kept escaping anyway. I would catch him casually strolling through my yard, chasing after his loose dog like it was no big deal. When I confronted him about it, he would just apologize half-heartedly and say his dog got out again. I would tell him this was happening multiple times per month and that he needed to fix his fence properly. He would always brush me off, saying he would get to it eventually, but never actually doing anything about it. Last year, I finally had enough. I expanded our chain link fence all the way out to the property line so he couldn't cut through our yard anymore. I also had a survey done and discovered that his overgrown bushes were encroaching on my property by several feet. Those got trimmed back too. For good measure, I installed privacy slats in the fence. For some reason, this really bothered him. He complained about why I put up those ugly slats and whined that now he couldn't see into my yard. I told him that was exactly the point. I wanted privacy on my own property. He said it made the whole neighborhood look trashy. I pointed out that his broken down truck, parked on his front lawn for 5 years, was what actually made things look trashy. He didn't have an answer for that. I was completely at peace with him being annoyed by my fence improvements while I finally got full use of my own property. The new fence expansion included a strategic design element, a 3 to 4 inch gap at the bottom. Our property sits about 4 to 5 feet higher than his, thanks to how the houses were originally built. His yard is basically in a depression compared to ours. This height difference became very useful when dealing with his massive, diseased elm tree. The thing is mostly dead and constantly drops leaves, branches, and seeds all over my carefully maintained yard. I used to quietly clean up all his tree debris, but not anymore. Now I just pull out my leaf blower and send everything right back where it belongs, under the fence and onto his lawn. I remember years ago when some of my plant trimmings blew onto his property during a windstorm. I found them all dumped on my front porch the next day. Every time I blow his tree debris back into his yard, I think of that petty gesture and smile. The larger dead branches that used to go through my wood chipper now get tossed right over the fence onto his lawn. Let him deal with the mess from his own neglected tree for once. Another ongoing problem is his habit of burning trash in his backyard instead of paying for proper garbage service. He also runs his fireplace in the middle of summer, filling the air with smoke that gives me terrible headaches. Yesterday, my husband and I were staining some wood for a project, and the hot weather was making the stain vapors really strong. I set up some powerful fans to blow all those chemical fumes directly toward his house. Two can play at the air pollution game. One of our other neighbors told me he once keyed her car after some minor disagreement. When he finally got rid of his beat-up truck and bought a shiny new sedan, he was too cheap to get full insurance coverage. Within a few months, some woman broadsided him at an intersection. Since it was a he-said-she-said situation, she wasn't found at fault, and his insurance wouldn't cover the damage. His car came back from the shop drivable but completely smashed, with the airbags still hanging out like deflated balloons. I have to give karma credit for that one. The funny thing is, we get along great with everyone else in the neighborhood. Last year I gave away over 300 pounds of fruit from our trees, peaches, plums, apricots. We help clear sidewalks with our snowblower, share garden tools, and give away extra plants. We're known as the helpful neighbors to everyone except him. When it comes to this guy, I've become what you might call a petty woman in total control of herself. He could have had amazing neighbors if he'd just shown a little consideration instead of bullying us and stealing from us. But he chose to be a nightmare, so now he gets treated like one. After 20 years of his nonsense, I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they give you. He wants to be inconsiderate, fine. He wants to ignore property lines, not anymore. He wants to pollute my air. Well, now he can enjoy some chemical fumes of his own. Some people never learn that being a good neighbor is a two-way street. This guy could have had people who would help him out, share resources, and look out for his property when he's away. Instead, he chose to be entitled and selfish from day one. Now he's stuck living next to someone who's learned to be just as petty as he is, except I'm better at it. And unlike him, I have the moral high ground because I tried being nice first. He had 20 years to change his ways, but he never did. So here we are, locked in the world's longest passive-aggressive neighbor war. And honestly, I'm winning. My son just turned 12, and like most kids his age, he's gotten really good at video games and anything that involves quick reflexes. I've been a single dad for 3 years now since my divorce, and I work 2 jobs to make ends meet, one during the week at a warehouse and weekends at a local electronics repair shop. Money's always tight, but I saved up for months to throw him a decent birthday party. He'd been asking to go to that new laser tag place across town, and I figured he deserved it after getting straight A's on his report card. The place was packed when we got there on Saturday afternoon. I'd invited 6 of his friends from school, and their parents dropped them off around 2 o'clock. The laser tag arena was this big maze with neon lights and fog machines. Kids were running around everywhere, laughing and having a blast. The way it worked was simple. Each game lasted 15 minutes, and they kept score on a big screen. Winners got their names up there, and the staff would announce it over the speakers. My son was on fire that day. He won the first 3 rounds straight, and you could tell he was having the time of his life. That's when I noticed her. This woman, probably in her late 30s, standing near the scoreboard with her arms crossed. Her kid was maybe 10 years old, shorter than my son, and clearly getting frustrated. Every time my son's name popped up as the winner, she'd shake her head. During the 4th round, I watched through the viewing window as the kids played. My son was doing his usual thing, finding good hiding spots and picking off other players with perfect timing. But something was off. The woman's kid kept following my son around instead of playing the game properly. When my son would eliminate him, the kid would throw little tantrums, stomping his feet and complaining to the staff. After that round ended, I saw the woman walk over to the referee booth. She complained loudly to the staff member that the game wasn't fair because my son kept targeting her child specifically. The staff member explained that everyone targets everyone, and that's just how the game works. She argued back that my son was ruining the experience for all the other children and demanded they put him in a different group. The staff member apologized but said all the kids had paid for the same session and they couldn't separate players just because someone was doing well. I could see her getting more worked up, but I didn't think much of it. Kids win and lose games all the time. That's life. The 5th round started and again my son was dominating. Through the window I watched as he crept through the maze, systematically eliminating other players. He got Karen's kid twice in the first 5 minutes. That's when I saw something that made my blood boil. The woman had somehow gotten into the arena during the game. She wasn't supposed to be in there, but she'd slipped past the staff somehow. I watched in horror as she cornered my son in one of the maze sections where the cameras had a blind spot. She grabbed him by the shoulders and shoved him hard against the padded wall. My son stumbled backward, clearly confused and scared. Then she actually kicked him in the shin, causing him to fall to his knees. He was holding his leg, and I could see he was trying not to cry. She called him a little brat and yelled at him to stop picking on her son, claiming he was ruining her kid's birthday party. My son said he was just playing the game and begged her to leave him alone. She snapped at him not to talk back and asked if he thought he was so smart. She raised her hand like she was going to hit him again. That's when I lost it. I ran through the emergency exit into the arena, something that definitely set off alarms. But I didn't care. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was going to hurt my kid on my watch. She demanded to know who I thought I was barging in there. I told her I was his father and that I'd just watched her assault my 12-year-old son. She scoffed and said assault was ridiculous, claiming she was just teaching him some manners, since I clearly hadn't. I ordered her to get away from my son immediately. She challenged me, asking what I'd do about it and whether I'd call security. She insisted my son had been bullying her kid all day. I explained he was just playing a game while she had actually kicked a child. She shot back that he deserved it, and maybe next time he'd think twice before ruining other kids' fun. She actually stepped closer to me, getting right in my face like she was ready to fight. This woman was completely unhinged. My son was still on the ground behind her, holding his leg and looking terrified. That's when she made her biggest mistake. She turned back toward my son and raised her foot again, like she was going to kick him while he was down. I reacted on pure instinct. I punched her square in the stomach, not hard enough to seriously injure her, but hard enough to double her over and send her to the ground. She immediately started wailing like a banshee, rolling around on the floor and screaming for help, claiming that a maniac had just assaulted her and demanding someone call the police. I told her she had kicked my son first and that there were cameras everywhere. The staff came running in, followed by several other parents who'd heard the commotion. Karen kept screaming and carrying on, claiming I'd attacked her unprovoked. Her son was crying too, probably more from seeing his mom on the ground than from losing the game. The police showed up within 10 minutes. Karen immediately started her sob story about how I was a violent maniac who'd attacked her for no reason. She demanded I be arrested for assault, The officer told everyone to calm down so they could figure out what happened. Karen insisted that I had punched her in the stomach and demanded my immediate arrest. I simply asked them to check the security cameras, explaining that she had kicked my 12-year-old son first. The laser tag manager pulled up the footage on his computer, and we all watched it play back. There it was, clear as day. Karen entering the arena illegally, grabbing my son, shoving him against the wall, and then kicking him while he was down. The audio picked up everything she'd said too. The officer told her to stand up because she was under arrest for child abuse and assault. She protested wildly, insisting that I had hit her and that she was the victim. The officer explained that she had assaulted a minor first, and that his father was defending his child. She claimed that what she did wasn't assault and that she was just disciplining him. The officer told her that she had no legal right to put her hands on someone else's child. They arrested her right there in the laser tag arena. Turns out she had a history of similar incidents at other kid-focused businesses around town. The prosecutor was very interested in my case because it fit a pattern of behavior. I pressed charges for child abuse, and the whole thing was caught on camera from multiple angles. Karen tried to claim self-defense and that my son had been bullying her kid, but the footage showed everything. My son never said a word to her kid outside of normal game trash talk, and he certainly never put his hands on anyone. The case went to court 3 months later. Karen showed up with a lawyer, but it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. She got convicted of child abuse and had to pay a fine, plus she is banned from that laser tag place permanently. She also had to pay my son's medical bills, even though, thankfully, he just had some bruising. My son's doing fine now. He still loves laser tag and he's gotten even better at it. Sometimes he asks me about that day, and I tell him that some adults don't know how to handle it when kids are better than them at things. But I also made sure he knows that if anyone ever puts their hands on him again, he should defend himself and find an adult he trusts immediately. The laser tag place gave us free games for a year as an apology for not keeping their arena secure. The staff there now keeps a much closer eye on parents who seem to be getting too worked up about their kids losing. Karen has been banned from several other entertainment venues around town for similar outbursts. Some people never learn, I guess. But at least now there's a paper trail, so the next parent who has to deal with her will have backup when they file their own report. I do commissioned artwork and have been for about 3 years now. It started as a side hustle when I was in college, but after graduating with my art degree and struggling to find steady work, it became my main source of income. I work from my small apartment, taking on everything from pet portraits to wedding invitations to logo designs. The pay isn't always great, but I love the creative freedom and being my own boss. My policy has always been simple: I'll draw anything, as long as it's not racist, homophobic, hateful, or sexually disturbing. I've done artwork for people of all backgrounds and beliefs. Fantasy dragons for gamers, family portraits for grandparents, band logos for musicians, and yes, religious artwork for people of faith. Art is art to me, and I pride myself on being able to adapt my style to whatever the client needs. About 2 months ago, I got a message through my online portfolio from someone wanting a piece with Christian themes. He explained that he wanted something for his home office, an ornate cross as the centerpiece, with Saint Michael the Archangel on one side and some scripture in decorative calligraphy flowing around the design. He sent me several reference images and was very specific about the style he wanted. The budget was decent and the timeline was reasonable, so I accepted the commission. I spent about 2 weeks working on it. I researched the iconography to make sure I got the details right, practiced the calligraphy style he wanted, and put together what I thought was one of my better pieces. The cross had intricate Celtic knotwork. St. Michael looked powerful and divine, and the scripture flowed beautifully around the composition. When I sent him the final digital file, I was proud of the work. His response was enthusiastic. He loved it, said it was exactly what he'd envisioned, and paid me immediately through the platform we'd been using. But then, about an hour after he paid, I got another message from him. He told me the work was absolutely beautiful, and that he was grateful for the piece. Then he asked me something personal. He wanted to know what my favorite scripture was. He said he'd love to know what spoke to me when I create pieces like this. I stared at the message for a moment. It was an innocent enough question, but I could see where this might be heading. I decided to be honest rather than try to fake my way through it. I told him that I didn't really have a favorite scripture because I wasn't a Christian and wouldn't really know which ones I'd like. The response came back almost immediately. He asked me to wait and confirm what I'd just said, that I wasn't Christian. I confirmed that no, I wasn't Christian, but explained that I create artwork for people of all faiths and backgrounds. That's kind of my thing, I told him. He said he didn't understand. He pointed out that I posted Christian artwork before on my portfolio and he'd assumed I was a believer. I acknowledged that yes, I had done Christian themed pieces before, but I do artwork for everyone. I explained that I don't have to share someone's beliefs to create meaningful art for them. Then came the message that made my stomach drop. He said he felt completely lied to and that this changed everything about the artwork. He claimed the piece didn't hold the same spiritual value because it wasn't made with faithful intention. He asked how something could be truly Christian art if it wasn't created by someone with faith. I sat there reading that message 3 times, trying to figure out how to respond. This was a first for me. I told him I was sorry he felt that way, but I do artwork for everyone, and I am open to doing Christian artwork because it's for the client, not me. I explained that I put the same care and attention into every piece I create. He said that I didn't understand what those symbols meant to him and to other Christians. He said I was just copying images without understanding their true meaning. I replied that I had researched everything thoroughly to make sure I represented it respectfully and accurately. I told him I take all of my commissions seriously. He argued that research wasn't the same as faith. He said anyone could look up what St. Michael represents, but only someone who truly believes could capture his essence. At this point, I was getting frustrated. The guy had been thrilled with the artwork 30 minutes ago, and now suddenly it was worthless because I wasn't the right religion. I told him I understood that faith was important to him, but the quality of the artwork hadn't changed. He'd been happy with it before he knew anything about my personal beliefs. Then he demanded a refund. I explained that I was sorry but the work was completed and he'd approved it. I told him my policy was no refunds after final approval and payment. He said this was ridiculous and that I should have disclosed that I wasn't Christian up front. He claimed he would never have hired me if he'd known. I responded that my religious beliefs weren't listed in my portfolio because they weren't relevant to my ability to create quality artwork. He argued that they were absolutely relevant when the art was religious. He threatened to leave reviews everywhere about this, saying people needed to know that I was misleading Christian clients. Now I was getting angry. This guy was threatening to trash my reputation because I wasn't the religion he assumed I was. I told him he was welcome to leave honest reviews about the quality of the artwork and my professionalism, but that I hadn't misled anyone. He said he was reporting this to the platform and that this had to be against their terms of service somehow. Then he escalated further, saying he was actually going to dispute the charge with his credit card company because I had obtained payment under false pretenses. That last message really set me off. False pretenses. I delivered exactly what he'd ordered. I pointed out that he'd commissioned artwork. I delivered artwork that met his specifications and he'd approved and paid for it. My personal beliefs were never part of our agreement. Then he dropped another bombshell. He claimed that a true Christian would never charge another Christian for artwork spreading God's word. Now he was saying I should have worked for free. I asked him directly if that's what he meant, that I should have done this for free because that's not how commissions work. He confirmed that if I were really doing this for the right reasons, yes, I should have worked for free. He then added that he'd been a Christian for 40 years and knew what real Christian art looked like, and this wasn't it. At this point, I was done being polite. I told him he was right, this wasn't Christian art. It was just art that happened to have Christian themes. But I pointed out that it was the exact same art he'd been praising an hour ago. The only thing that had changed was his assumption about me. He told me not to get smart with him. I replied that I wasn't getting smart. I was pointing out that he was judging the quality of artwork based on the artist's religion rather than the actual work itself. That seemed pretty unchristian to me, but what did I know? He was outraged that I would dare lecture him about Christianity. I clarified that I wasn't lecturing him about Christianity, I was lecturing him about being a decent customer. That's when things got really nasty. He said that people like me were all the same, we pretend to respect their faith, but we're just using them for money. People like me. I wasn't even sure what group he was lumping me into, but the tone was clear enough. I told him his true colors were showing now. He threatened to make sure every Christian artist platform knew about the scam I was supposedly running. I told him to go ahead, saying I was sure they'd be very interested to hear about how he tried to get free artwork and then threw a tantrum when he found out I wasn't the right religion for him. I was about to block him when I remembered something. I scrolled back through our original conversation and found what I was looking for. I pointed out that when he'd first contacted me, he'd said he found my portfolio through a search for diverse artists and specifically mentioned that he liked supporting creators from different backgrounds. I found it funny how that tune had changed. There was a long pause before his next message. He said that was different. I asked him how exactly it was different. He explained that he'd meant racially diverse, not religiously diverse. I asked if he was fine with diversity when it was only the kind he approved of. He told me to stop twisting his words. I replied that I wasn't twisting anything. He'd literally just said he wanted to support diverse artists, but apparently only if they shared his religious beliefs. He told me to forget it and to keep my blood money. And with that charming parting shot, he blocked me. I sat there for a while, just staring at the conversation. 3 years of doing commissions, and this was the first time someone had demanded a refund based on my personal beliefs rather than the quality of my work. The next day, I saw that he'd left a 1-star review on the platform claiming I had misrepresented myself and scammed Christian clients. I responded professionally, explaining that religious beliefs had never been part of our agreement and that the client had been satisfied with the work until learning about my personal faith. The platform reviewed the case and sided with me, removing his review for being based on discrimination rather than work quality. They also flagged his account for violating their anti-discrimination policies. A week later, I got a message from another artist on the platform who said they'd heard about what happened through the artist community. Apparently, this same client had pulled similar stunts with other creators, demanding refunds or free work based on various personal objections after the work was completed. The platform had been building a case against him, and my situation was the final straw. His account was permanently banned. I've done several more Christian-themed pieces since then, and every other client has been wonderful to work with. Turns out most people of faith are actually capable of appreciating good artwork regardless of who creates it. I've been best friends with this girl for 12 years. We've been through everything together. High school drama, college stress, family issues, career changes. I always thought we had something special. You know, the kind of friendship where you consider each other chosen family. For the past month, she's been staying at my house with my family. This isn't unusual. She's done this before when she needed a place to crash between apartments or during tough times. My parents love her. My siblings treat her like another sister, and she fits right in. She helps cook dinner, watches movies with us, and even sleeps in my bed like we're actual sisters. I've always told her that my close friends are my chosen family, and I meant it. Last week, we decided to take a trip to Miami together. It was supposed to be this amazing girls' trip, just us having fun, exploring the city, taking pictures for social media. The whole week was great until the last day when everything went sideways. We were exhausted from all the partying and sightseeing, and we had to pack quickly to catch our flight home. Before the trip, she had specifically told me not to pack too many shoes because I could just borrow hers. So I only brought my heels and some purses that we planned to share. I figured I'd just wear the sneakers I had been borrowing from her to the airport for our flight back. That morning I was getting ready and went to grab those sneakers, but I saw her putting them on instead. I wasn't mad about it. They're her shoes, obviously. but now I needed something else to wear. I asked if I could wear another pair of sneakers she had sitting outside her suitcase. She started acting weird, looking around, not giving me a straight answer. She was doing this thing where she'd start to say something and then stop, like she was trying to figure out how to say no without actually saying it. I got frustrated and asked her directly if she didn't want me to wear them. She said no, she didn't. I told her to just say that then instead of dancing around the question. I'll be honest, I was frustrated. My tone definitely showed it. I wasn't yelling or trying to start a fight, but I sounded irritated. We were rushing, I was tired, and I just wanted a straight answer instead of her beating around the bush. Later that day, after we got home, she wanted to talk about what happened. She told me that my comment that morning felt like fighting words to her, like actual physical fighting words. I was shocked. I explained that I wasn't trying to be hostile at all. I was just tired and frustrated, and I apologized for my tone. To me, it really wasn't that serious. I told her I was sorry and that I didn't mean it that way. I explained that I was just frustrated and tired from the trip. Then she said something that completely crushed me. She told me that she talks to her sisters like that because they're family, but we're just friends, not family. So that kind of tone isn't acceptable between us. I felt like she had punched me in the stomach. Here's this person who has been sleeping in my bed for a month, eating meals with my family, being treated like one of us, and she's telling me we're just friends. After 12 years of friendship, after all the times I've called her my chosen family, after opening my home to her whenever she needed it, I reminded her that she was staying in my house. When I said it, she backtracked. She told me not to get it twisted, that I am family to her, but friends shouldn't talk like that to each other. But the damage was already done. She had already dismissed everything we had built together. I tried to explain myself again. I told her I didn't mean it that way, that I'm not perfect, and sometimes when my patience runs thin, I slip up. I explained that this happens with my actual family too sometimes. It's rare, but it happens when I reach my limit. I also brought up something that had been bothering me. I told her that she was in a mood that morning too, that she was short with me and not acting like herself. I asked her to acknowledge that. She just stared at me. No apology, no reflection on her own behavior. Nothing. She acted like she had been perfectly pleasant all morning when she clearly hadn't been. Then right in the middle of our conversation, she completely changed the subject. She told me that she and our other friend were going to North Carolina that weekend and asked if I wanted to come. She said it was an open invitation, she guessed. The way she said I guess felt so dismissive and weird, like she was doing me some kind of favor by inviting me. After everything we had just talked about, after telling me we're not family, she's casually inviting me on another trip like nothing happened. I need to give her credit where it's due. She's not a terrible friend. She's invited me to visit her in California too, though I haven't been able to make that trip yet. She's been there for me through a lot of stuff over the years. But right now, I'm really hurt. I opened my home and my heart to her. My family welcomed her like she was one of us. We shared everything: clothes, food, space, experiences. And after one small miscommunication where I got a little snippy because I was tired and frustrated, suddenly I'm being told we're not family. The more I think about it, the more it bothers me. She's been living in my house for free, eating our food, using our Wi-Fi, taking up space in my bed. My parents have been driving her places when she needed rides. My siblings have included her in everything. We've all treated her like family because I told them she was family to me. But apparently that was all one-sided. Apparently I was the only one who saw our friendship as something deeper than just being friends. And the moment I had one frustrated outburst, not even a real fight, just a snippy comment, she felt the need to put me in my place and remind me of the hierarchy she sees in our relationship. I'm seriously considering not letting her stay with me again. I need to protect my peace and my family's peace. If she sees us as just friends, then maybe she should find somewhere else to stay when she needs help. Maybe just friends don't open their homes for month-long stays. Maybe just friends don't share beds and clothes and family dinners. The worst part is that she never even apologized for her own attitude that morning or acknowledged that she contributed to the tension. She put it all on me like I was some kind of monster for getting frustrated. But she can't see past her own perspective to understand how her words about us not being family completely destroyed me. I've spent the last few days thinking about it, and I realized that this whole situation showed me something important about our friendship. When things get tough, she's quick to put distance between us and remind me that we're just friends. But when she needs something, a place to stay, someone to travel with, a family to belong to, suddenly that distance disappears. I'm done being someone's convenience family. Either we're chosen family who work through conflicts together, or we're casual friends who don't live together and share everything. She can't have it both ways anymore. The North Carolina trip invitation is still hanging in the air. Part of me wants to go just to prove that I'm not holding grudges. But honestly, I think I need some space from her right now. I need to figure out what our friendship actually means to me if it doesn't mean the same thing to her. Maybe this was the wake-up call I needed to see our friendship for what it really is instead of what I wanted it to be. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.